This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando.
Hello, Star Wars Legion folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando. Very, very special cast today. I have the guys from the Legion Academy on to talk Friday night fights and all sorts of good stuff in Star Wars Legion. Hey folks, welcome back. Like I said, super awesome cast today. I have Sean and Joe with me today. And Joe, how's it going, man? How are you doing?
Great. Happy to be here. Name's Joe DePinto. I'm from the Legion Academy podcast stream, and been playing Legion since the game came out. And I travel a lot to many tournaments across the country throughout the year, and really enjoy the hobby. So it's happy to be here.
It's really exciting to have you guys on. I watch your guys live. Well, when I can, I catch it live. Otherwise, I watch it. And I reached out to Sean because he's been running the Friday night fight stuff, which we have to talk about. So how are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing most excellent. If I'm freezing on your camera, it's because I'm part robot here, apparently. So, no, I'm doing most excellent. Thanks for having us on here. So, as Joe said, I'm the other half of Legion Academy, and of course, I run the terrain studio as well. That's my terrain business. I've been doing that for about 15 years, and doing Legion Academy with Joe since inception, right after the first LVO. And we do Friday night fights. Really, I kind of run the back end, and then Joe and whoever else we have guest casting does that. Sometimes I get to play. Joe, unfortunately, hasn't made it up to play yet, but we'll get him on some Friday night fights as well. So we're having fun doing both Legion Academy and Friday night fights. It's been a blast, and we appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, well, I again, thanks a lot. I really am impressed with Friday night fights. So I want to talk about that a bit, kind of the idea behind that. But first, I want to know, how did you two link up, right? Because from my ear, it sounds like you guys don't live in the same location. So how did you guys find each other and link up, and what's the story there?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, I live in the United States. I live in like the south suburbs of Chicago, and Sean lives in Canada. So obviously we'd never really met in person before the first LVO. So, first LVO was, I believe, a 64-person tournament. It was in the first year of Legion. I was super hyped for it. I'm sure Sean was as well. We traveled out. I was really excited. It was my first time going to Vegas. And I played in the tournament, and I went undefeated. I think Sean also made top 8, so we were both playing in the final round. And we briefly met each other at LVO, but then afterwards... a friend of ours, John Griffin, who is also local to our Chicago community, we were talking amongst each other because he got first place, I got second place in the tournament. And we were talking about maybe starting some sort of content creation. So we were thinking podcast videos, something we wanted to do. And Sean just so happened to reach out because he was also doing a lot of terrain streams, and I think he was looking for, and Sean, you can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, it's been a few years, but you're kind of looking for to kind of expand into maybe the podcast realm too. You reached out and you were like, hey, just looking to do some sort of collaborations, just seeing who in the community is interested. And it totally worked out because we were like, hey, we were just talking about this. And we've seen your streams. We've watched you build that like beautiful Andore table and a bunch of your terrain streams. This could be a fantastic partnership. And we started off initially as just a podcast, like no video component, just audio. Did that for 25, 30 episodes. And I think it was around Gen Con, or right after Gen Con, Sean. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, where we actually met up in person for the first time. And then decided we're going to start doing some video stuff.
Yep. No, that sounds about right, Joe. Joe nailed the story. So just seems like really well with pandemic and all, but it just seems so long ago that we did that. So
Hmm.
and we're just nearly ready to hit episode 100. So that kind of tells you how long we've been going at it. So
Hmm.
I like to say we're double time because we usually run pretty lengthy episodes. So right around that 2 hour mark. So nearly
Hmm.
we're hitting quite a bit of content time. I think we're probably nearly over 300 hours now of content for Legion Academy. So yeah, we've been doing a good amount of time. We've been putting a lot of dedication into it, and yeah, Joe told the story well, and it's been weird, our evolution. I mean, I think we probably go back and cringe a little bit at our first episodes,
Oh yeah.
not at the
Yeah.
time for sure, but like just our evolution and trying to get better. And that's really what we do every week. We're trying to get better. Every week we're trying to be more interactive with dry spells. It's our job to put content out, or we make it our job. But sometimes it gets a little tough. So we've really embraced the whole sort of community approach, and having interviews like this and reaching out on other people's platforms is mutually beneficial. So we have been really making that our focus, not just on competitive, not just on product, but Legion's all encompassing. And so we've been really trying to do that in our last 100 episodes.
Yeah, well, I think what you just said is a great lead in, right? Talking about trying to encompass all of it. As you guys, may know, my channel is more focused towards the casual player. I've only been doing this for about a year and a half, and it's all been in the pandemic. So I don't have that many games under my belt in real life. So what I wanted to do for those on my channel was really highlight what you guys are doing over there, specifically right now on Friday Night Fights, which I think last week was actually on a Saturday, but the spirit is there, right? So can you talk to us kind of how so what Friday Night Fights is, to summarize, is basically a live streamed game. And I'm going to be showing some images up as we talk, but can you guys kind of talk to us, what the vision was there, where it came out of, and how it grew into really the amazing product that it is right now?
Yep. Do you want to go, Joe, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so one of the things we always wanted to do were battle reports. We felt that just generally at the time, kind of when we started Friday Night Fights, which was before the pandemic, that there were only a few sources for battle reports. And while we thought they were great, we thought that we had a lot of ideas about ways we can improve on them, or things we personally would have liked to see. And we were seeing a lot of tabletop simulator streams and stuff, but we're like, man, not a lot of people are doing this for like the physical game. And to us, that is really what Legion is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like what sparked the idea. We're like, hey, we should just start trying to figure out how we can do like maybe live battle reports that are more interactive. And then it just kind of grew from there. Sean has been absolutely brilliant in learning how to make overlays and putting in a ton of this additional work. And like it's almost become, like you mentioned, it's almost become like a live sports broadcast, almost, where he's got the ability to pull cards up, he's got the ability to have like a scoreboard, the ability to point things out, have the deployment zones overlaid. All of that took a lot of work, and I'm sure, Sean, you can speak to the fact that like you really never did anything like this before, so you had to like teach yourself all of this stuff as you were going. And kudos to you for really learning really quickly how to do that kind of stuff. But you can, if you go back to our first one and then look now, you can see it's like, oh, every week or every 2 weeks there's a different feature, there's a different overlay. Sean's built in this next really cool thing, and it's just kind of grown and grown and grown to what it is now. And I think it's presented fantastically now.
Yeah, you mentioned specifically that's what I had when I reached out to you guys, and I think I was on one of the earlier ones, and it's like watching a sports broadcast, and I think there are some sports out there that could actually probably hire Sean to come in and improve their coverage. So go ahead, Sean. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so basically, I look at it as it's a little bit of a challenge each week for me. I try to, I should say, reach out to the community and say, hey, what could we do to make this a little bit better? Some folks wanted to see the score a little bit more prominent, know the turn counter. So we had that sort of stuff, but it wasn't always up. So kind of built a little scoreboard. I think that is a nice little feature. People wanted the lists displayed, and while having the list filtered on each side all the time isn't showing all the actions, we have some screens for that. We wanted in-game shots, so thanks to our supporters, and they continue to support basically I match everything that goes into this, and Joe does as well. We do it via the Patreon to really expand the experience for players. So we have some in-game cameras. We're about to add a silhouette focused camera, like literally at model height. We try to do over the overheads, and like Joe said, I don't know really, or I didn't know anything about overlays or using any sort of programs, and so Friday Night Fights and Legion Academy was basically the catalyst to learn things. I wanted it to look how it looked in my brain. I wanted it to be the experience that I wanted to have as a viewer. And so while Joe and I do play TTS and we do watch other TTS streams, watching video games isn't fun for me, and I don't play video games, and I think that's why that correlation's not there. But I love sports. I'm a big sports guy. I love watching sports. So I take a lot of my leads from when I'm watching a sport, what do I want to consume? What do I want to see? What angles do I want? How much action do I want to be immersed in? And the ability to take our live platform and interact with our audience, that is Legion Academy. We are a live podcast, gamecasters who interact with our audience. We have a fantastic audience. We have so many cool things that have just developed in our chats, from our check-ins, our shout-outs, our banter, our ability to to put those comments so players can see them on the fly, and then now our players are interacting with our commentators. So we're about the immersive experience, and everything that we do is focused on that. The Legion gameplay is fun, but we play competitive. We want to get into real Legion and the grindy stuff. We go to tournaments, and that's where we focus on that. Friday Night Fights is not about the grind. It's about cool, fun things. I got to play a game last night. That's fun for me. But really, Friday Night Fights, I get the most enjoyment about watching the other guys play. Learning, teaching, we do all that stuff there on the fly as well. Bad beats, good beats, wicked dice skews. We had lots of that last night as well. Having fun and getting immersed in that and enjoying it with other people is kind of what Friday Night Fights is about, and the viewers that we have each week, we try to make them part of that as well.
Yeah, and we try to keep it fun, doing things like holiday themed events. I believe before the pandemic, during Halloween, we had like a zombie stormtrooper outbreak stream where it was like we made our own custom rule set about zombies popping out of terrain. The players didn't know where the zombies were going to spawn, and Sean was like, "Oh, you walked into the bad area," and it was putting zombies on the table and stuff. So we like to do stuff like that too, just to keep it interesting and fresh and fun for everyone. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, I think the product has really delivered. Joe, you mentioned that there are other people out there who do even IRL coverage. War Corgi and Krabot come to mind in terms of their Battlecast. They're just the first two. I know there are probably others out there. They do a very good job. But what I specifically enjoy about yours is, like Sean, you mentioned the live. Right? I learned something 2 weeks ago about Cad Bane. Like, I've been playing the guy for months, and I learned something about him because of what happened in asking a question. And the interactive and the back and forth there is really It's a great product. The whole thing is a great product. So, cheers to both you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for those of you who they had talked about their cast as well, and I highly recommend you go over and check out their, I believe it's Wednesday live streams for your Legion Academy cast. So specifically last week, you guys were kind of talking very interesting chat about passing and activation counts and stuff like that. And I wanted to ask you guys, without us getting too into the weeds about it, what is your take? For me as a casual player, I approach my list building differently than you guys might in terms of talking about 13 activations and stuff. So what is your guys' take overall on looking at the difficulty right now from number of activations and playing someone like a Grievous? Like, if I wanted to play Grievous and Maul together, I mean, even with the droids, I'm looking at not the activation count I probably should be. Right, so what's your take overall? I'll go to you first, Joe. What's your take overall with trying to balance the thematic versus the competitive? And does that lie anywhere, or do you have to basically pick one side or the other?
Well, I would say that for the most part, most of the named characters in the game can be competitive, even if you wouldn't consider every single one of them to be like the ultra top tier. Like I played an 8 activation list with Grievous and Dooku in it, and I won 2 tournaments. So that doesn't mean necessarily that just because you want to lean into a theme or a character that you can't play the game competitively and do well. I really think that a lot of strength lies in just reps and list knowledge and having a plan for like every possible situation. And there's a lot of ways you can do that without necessarily sacrificing the ability to win and be competitive. But that being said, there are like generally meta lists that form. There are really super efficient mathematical ways to assess the game that a lot of people lean into. So I guess it just depends what type of player you want to be. If you want to be, if you're always looking to enter a tournament and with the goal of winning or placing top 4, no matter what, you're probably going to not care so much about what you're putting on the table as long as you know that what you're putting on the table is really good and efficient. I, on the other hand, am like the type of player who cares about winning and tries as hard as they can to do well, but I'm not gonna like let the experience be ruined if I don't make top 8. I just enjoy being there and playing, and I like to play lists that suit my personal flavor and play style. I've always played like a 200-point lightsaber wielder in pretty much every list. Palpatine, Dooku, a lot of Anakin lately. And I've done well with all of those characters in tournaments. I'm not always like winning an LVO or even going top 8 in LVO, but I have before, and I've like won a lot of local events and stuff doing that. And so for me, I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to look to play like a 13 activation gun line just because it's really efficient, because to me it's boring. So I guess it just comes down to really, what are you trying to achieve in this game? What are your personal goals? And do you care about theme, or do you just care about winning with the most efficient list possible? I think there's room to be either or, so.
Yeah, fair enough. Sean, what do you think?
I think Joe covered it off quite well. I also have played a Grievous double tank list at the online Gen Con. I did top 4 there, so you can put him into lists and be competitive. I think if I was going to summarize in a word, I think expectations of a player are super important. If your expectations are that you want to go and you're going to go to a 64-man tournament and be competitive, you might have to tether your expectations of playing your CAD Grievous list. And maybe you might have to sort of structure that around one of them. I'm not saying you have to take both out for sure. I think you can be competitive with those. As Joe said, all those characters can be competitive. For me, my approach is I really don't like named characters. Truthfully, if I'm going to build most of my favorite competitive lists are they have efficiency and redundancy. That's my phrase. I like having lots of the same thing, so that if I have a loss or I lose a unit or something happens unexpected, I have like my own insurance policy built into my list. As such, I typically will skew up to around that 11 activations, maybe sometimes a bit more, depending on if it's a Rebel generics or CIS generics. But for me, I have both the same. I have the expectation of wanting to do well. It's okay if I don't. But for me to do well, I need to take a list that is built around efficiency. That's where I'm having the most enjoyment. If I want to play a really fun game, like I'm just like, I have no expectations here, but I want to try things out, because that's my big approach. I want to try something. I'll put together something, and I talk about this a lot in the cast. I'll put together a list, and when I go into a game, really I'm only focused on 1 or 2 things in that list. Everything can happen, lots of things can die, but I'm really just focused in on the small portions of what I wanted to enjoy. So if I'm going to put a CAD Maul into a list, I'm probably just focused mostly on CAD and Maul. Not really going to worry about the synergies or all that. I got to figure things out. It's really hard to go in and say, I'm going to take this whole new list, I've never played any of it, and then have the expectation that you're going to do fantastic. I tether my expectations to, let me just figure out these couple units. then let me sort of expand from there. So typically, I just feel like I like to play a portion of a list, and then I just replicate that 2 or 3 times. That way, when I'm learning, I can learn in like 3 different fashions at the same time. So that's how I enjoy the game. But really, expectations. What are yours as a player? And I think if you figure out what those are, you'll have the most fun. My expectation is just to throw these lightsabers in and kill things. That can happen. My expectation is to take lots of activations and live out 6 turns. Might lose on the objective. That can happen. So, yeah, that's my approach. And I think doesn't matter casual or competitive. Your expectations are have to be set by you. Play within them.
Yeah, and a big thing too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just one more thought I want to throw in is that, for example, there's a lot of people that are very vocal about what the meta is. You know, you can listen to many different podcasts and content creators. You could also just see these discussions pop up over and over again on Facebook or Discord or any of that. So if you don't want to play something that falls within the competitive meta, you at least have to understand that, like, when you go to an event, like 50 to 60% of the players are probably going to be playing meta lists. So when you're list building, if you want to build something interesting outside of that, just have a plan for dealing with those like known meta lists. Like, if you don't want to play a Rex gun line, but you need to show up to an event understanding, like, this is how my list will beat a Rex gun line. Because if we play 5 games, I'm playing against it probably twice. Like, no matter what. There's just going to be so many people here that are playing it, right? So have a plan for dealing with meta stuff with your list. Something I would recommend too.
Sure. I mean that makes sense. You can't just outwardly reject. Like, if you're someone who inherently doesn't want to play meta, I mean, we see this in every competitive game out there, card game, miniatures game, whatever. If you're someone who doesn't want to play meta, that's completely fine, and in fact, props to you. But meta is still, you have to admit that you can't just reject and ignore meta. So I think that's a fair point. And Joe, I think you did a really good job kind of describing how, or excuse me, Sean, I think you did a really good job, I think, describing how you were playing towards your personal thing. And that's what we see in other card games specifically. We'll see, somebody likes to be a control player. You like to be an aggro player. And, we don't have necessarily the same lines in Legion, but if what brings you joy is to play an efficiency list, then I think that's what you do. And if, for me, I want to play all my big guys in like 2 core units, then that's what brings me joy, right? So I think that's cool.
Yeah, and I should add, Joe and I get in these discussions lots of times. We would have 400 episodes if we recorded every time we talked about Legion. I can assure you of that for sure. But Joe and I do not play the game the same way at all. We present lists to each other, and our immediate minds are like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't have that. But the second we dive into the discussions, generally all that gets flushed out in our preference and our approach. Joe plays way more aggressive than me. So he's going to take something. I'll be like, I'm not going to have the range to use that, or I don't see that, or my plan with this is that we got into that discussion after last night's game. We get into it all the time. My point being is that you, as a casual player or consuming things on the internet, you can't just look at lists or hear about lists and then be like, oh yeah, I'm going to play that, and then expect to have the same results. Because if it doesn't fit your style, or you don't understand the synergies, or those just aren't flavorful units for you and you won't enjoy them no matter what, no matter how good they are, that's not the approach that you should probably take. I don't take that approach. If I don't immediately identify with some aspects of a list that I think I can enjoy, no matter how good it is, I won't play it. I don't play Rex Gunline, never have, and I likely never will. It's not, even though it's a castle style list, it's not for me. I also don't play lightsaber wielders typically. I did for Grievous because there was no other option, but as soon as there was, see you, Grievous. But Joe, of course, he likes to wield them. He loves the 200-point models. I do too, but they need to come in forms of armor and not in forms of lightsabers. That's just our preference. But we still enjoy the game, and we can still be competitive and still play casual games and enjoy those as well. And we're on 2 ends of the spectrum. So
awesome. Yep. I think those are great answers. So I think that's actually a pretty good lead into what was supposed to be my first question, but these happen organically, right? We are currently, I think it's safe to say, we're in a product drought, or a product and content drought. Let's be safe there. So what are, I guess the kind of question is, how how do we as a community handle that? And then do you foresee us, once AMG finally gets, the motor running, do you foresee them moving to more of a crisis protocol type thing where there's almost so many models coming out you can't keep track of them? Or more of like a, hold the line, kind of at the slow as mud FFG style release pace? And where do you think the happiness lies? So what do you think, Sean?
I don't think that I would love an Crisis Protocol release schedule, because I think with Legion, and I'm not a Crisis Protocol player, but I don't think people in Crisis Protocol are picking up 2-3 boxes of each release, right? So, but in Legion, that's very likely. Like I pick up generally 3 or 4 or 2 if it's a big box. Like, so to come out sort of like, and I would do that, but I would feel like almost like I might have to make some cuts, and I wouldn't want to do that because currently I'm just kind of on pace. A completist, I think, is what Joe refers to that as. We certainly are in a drought here for content-wise. We know as content creators, we have to sort of be imaginative in what we do, and there's lots of aspects of the game to explore, but ultimately we're in this for the models and the gameplay. So I know Joe's very eager and probably talk about the next releases that are coming, but this gap is a little bit, I would say, detrimental to the game, although we haven't really seen players dropping off. I think we're at the cusp of being able to return to in-person gaming, and it would be fantastic to coincide that with new models to purchase and play. And because we're going to kind of return with a gap, I feel like there's a little bit of a void there, and I don't want to lose players as a result of that. So I don't understand, and I don't presume to understand all the things that are happening. I know this transition over from FFG to AMG probably has some logistics there, but I would rather see a steady release, and I would love to see content released in between the product releases to always keep me excited for the next thing. And we do know lots of things that are coming, but I think when they come out, if we don't have an immediate filler of what's after this, like we are consumption like beasts when it comes to content and models. That's what gamers are. So we need that flow. That would be my advice, my preference. Although I will take it as I get it, but I'm not interested in seeing it come like in floods, like the garden hose, squeezing the garden hose, letting it all come out, squeezing it off. That's not my approach. I don't need the flood of product. I want the consistency.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that I don't think Legion is going to go to the Crisis Protocol's warp speed. I think it's, the difference between Crisis Protocol and Legion is that you're testing one character at a time when you're creating Crisis Protocol minis. So you kind of like, you test 1 to 2 characters, you put those together, you see what their synergies are, decide if they're broken or really disruptive, you tweak them, you tune them, and then you just flood them out into the community. I think Legion is a game that, because there's so much, the armies themselves are so much bigger, there's so many more implications for getting something wrong and how disruptive that can be to the competitive scene. And then people in Legion generally take the game very seriously when it comes to like the competitive scene. There's quite a large showing at these conventions and stuff. So I don't know if they're going to be cranking product out like every 2 weeks to once a month, like they're doing with Crisis Protocol. I think we'll probably see more like what it looked like in the first year under FFG, where we maybe get 1 or 2 new units per month. I would assume, once things kind of get back to normal and get rolling again. But I wouldn't expect to get releases for all 4 factions every month. Probably more like quarterly is the realistic expectation, in my opinion. But also, you're right. We're in a huge drought. As content creators who insist on putting out content weekly, it does get challenging. So we're trying to lean into like as many different aspects as we can when it comes to producing content. Maybe this week we'll interview someone. Maybe next week we'll focus on a hobby segment. We'll cover off some games that we've played. We did recently just get the AA5 and the LAAT, and it's still kind of unexplored territory for the community. So I think over the next few months, while we're waiting for more information about Yoda and Wookiees and all these new droid units and stuff, We'll probably just be looking at LAAT stuff a lot and AA5 stuff and trying to see what people are saying, if they're having fun, and what they're doing with those units, because I think there's a lot to explore there. But yeah, it'd be nice to get more information from AMG, maybe just some Yoda spoiler cards for his command cards or something, so we have more to talk about. Maybe we could run some proxies locally in our games and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
we do have a Kashyyyk table we are making here in studio, so we are poised for the release of all the new product. But as Joe said about the LAAT and the AA5, we talked last night, and we were getting it in chat as well. But we're gonna see in the next few weeks, we're gonna get those on the tables too, right? Because part of what we're trying to do is have that reciprocal relationship between the two shows, where we can talk about lists, present ideas and strategies, and then try to put those into action on the table to see if they actually pan out, right? Because it's one thing to hear how something works, it's another thing to see how something works. And then you can also hear it and then see if that actually works. So everything in theory is great until it doesn't work, but we're fine to test that, and the ability to test basically in our own studio is really cool, where we then can go back and talk about it and be like, yeah, that didn't quite pan out how I hoped, so let's make this tweak. And so in a drought, that's the best option we have right now.
Yeah, your Kashyyyk table, by the way, look at it. You've been spoiling that for almost a couple months now, and it's coming together.
It's been a long process. Process. That thing it's bigger than a 6x4 table on a smaller platform, because it's basically just a 3x3x3 cube at this point. There's so much going on. So yeah, I'll be happy to get it finished.
Well, cool. So yeah, in terms of the product drought stuff, I do want to give a shout out. There's what are they calling it? What's the campaign? The community-driven campaign by the folks over at Fifth Trooper. They're working on that, right? We have people in the community. The point is, we have people in the community stepping up to kind of fill that gap, which is great. But I think it would be nice to be in a Asmodee community at some point in my gaming career that didn't have to have the community step up and do it. But It is what it is, right?
Yep.
Par for the course, man.
Yeah,
it seems like across the board. Yeah.
But hey, if we're gonna do it for them for free, then I guess that's okay. So, all right, last big question, and then we'll get out of here, and we'll go, Sean. We'll go to you first. So, do you have any big hopes for Legion? Maybe we already covered them. Big hope for Legion in the coming year.
I mean, how wide can I go on this? Most of my hopes fall in products, but in terms of future releases. But I'll give you a couple. So I'm really hoping that, and I know I think we got enough vehicles, but I'm okay to keep going down the vehicle stream. I think there's some things, and while I dream real big, I still feel like the size of vehicles that we have, but I'd just like to see a bit more of those personally. I would also love to see, and Joe had a good point on Friday Night Fights last night, I would love to see some more creatures in this game, to be perfectly honest, and maybe some generic creatures that you could actually insert in various factions. So cross factions, sort of generic creatures, love to have that, just because I think they're really cool. This Star Wars is about the aliens and the monsters for sure. And then finally, from a, let's say, a gameplay perspective, and we're going to get into this conversation next week on our show, is I really would like to start to see the factions have some thematic identity. I would love to see factions that start to differentiate, not just between the units, because I think we have a lot of unit parity in terms of the releases. You get an operative, you get an operative, you get a vehicle, you get a vehicle. And while I don't necessarily think we need to shift away from that, I would like to see some factions start carving out some specialties within the faction itself. And so, for example, I will say I'd love to have droids go to 8 core units. Break the faction core structure and give me more droids. I would love to see where perhaps the rebels could take either more commanders or more operatives, because they have so many options there, and people sometimes have to make those tough choices. Make your character army that has a few core. make it about the Jedi leading that small contingency of units. So I would love to see that. And then I'd love to see some specialty rules. Like Joe and I've got into some things around. He thinks maybe droids suppressive mechanic could change a little bit. So maybe they're anti-suppressive, like they can't be suppressed, only works when you're like in line of sight or close to your leader. When a droid's off on the other side of the table, it's not necessarily the most courageous droid who's doing all the things that the other droids are. So maybe having some mechanics around that, some thematic faction rules that are like, 3 or 4 rules that no matter what, if you play CIS, these things apply, not coming just from keywords. So I would love to see that. I think AMG is the company to perhaps introduce that. I think that's kind of in the realm of possibility. I don't know if they ever will, but if they're listening, that would be my hopes for Legion.
No, fair enough. All right, going to you, Joe.
Yeah, I actually really agree with that, like kind of sub-faction / interesting, unique rules for armies. I mean, we've seen this in a lot of other war games. I'd like to see the idea that it's like, okay, maybe you can build a themed army and there's a benefit to building a theme army, like you get additional bonuses or something. And you can do this as a PDF. You don't really even need to release like new product to do this or issue new cards. But there could be something, for example, we see this in some Games Workshop games, like Middle Earth strategy battle game is a classic example where it's like you can run an army of Rohan, or you can run an army of Gondor, or you can mix the two together because they're allies. But if you run like a very specific Rohan list, you get like 5 or 6 different bonuses because it represents a themed battle that you would see in the books. So you can do something like, I don't know, maybe like the Battle of Endor. If you build a Battle of Endor list, like what rebels were participating on Endor? Like Han was down there, Chewie was down there, Leia was down there, and you had the rebel troopers and stuff. So if you keep them together, and you can't take everything in the faction, you can't, for example, you can't take Jin because Jin wasn't on Endor. So you build this themed rebel list, and now maybe you get 2 or 3 army-wide bonuses, or you get some sort of special ability, or you get to clear additional suppression at the end of the turn or something. Whatever it is, I think doing something like that would be really interesting. The other thing I'd like to see, just from like an organized play perspective, is I would just like to see some alternative formats in the tournament settings that the community actually puts on their back and supports outside of just the standard 800-point game. I wish people would elevate skirmish more and take it more seriously as a competitive format. I wish people would maybe embrace some sort of team tournament where you're on a team of 3 and you each play your game, and to advance to the next round, you had to go like 2-1 and your team had to win. Stuff like that. I would also like to see tournament formats where maybe certain objectives are just banned for the event, which totally changes how people consider building their lists. Or maybe certain units are banned, or certain units you can take more of. Like, you're allowed to take 3 heavies at this event. How does that change your list building? Stuff like that. So I know for Crisis Protocol, AMG has done a lot of these like events at like Adepticon and LVO that involved their organized play kits and kind of playing these like raid-like scenarios where it's like one supermodel versus your whole team. There's all these alternative rules. If they applied that to Legion, that would be something fantastic we could see too. So,
yeah, those are great. You're making me think of like a battle plan card or something like that, where you get, if you follow the rules on the card, you get bonuses. I like that idea. I like you guys mentioned creatures. I think creatures would be a perfect way to go for like the PvE style environment. I think that'd be, fight a Rancor and he's 1.5 feet tall or something. I don't know what the
right.
I know there's space nerds yelling at me about size scales there, but still, you know what I'm saying.
Could do you could have like one player control just a Rancor and it has like 60 health.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other player gets to throw an army at it, right? But the Rancor could take like 12 actions or whatever. You could do a lot of that kind of PvE, like you said. Yeah. That raid format. Yeah.
Yeah. All sorts of rabbit holes we could go down, but I don't know. I love it, and that's it's Star Wars, and we are passionate about it, and that's what we're here to do. So, Yeah, my only thing for the next year is I think it's a crime we don't have an apprentice Ahsoka yet to go with Anakin.
I agree.
That needs to happen. That's my only thing. But anyway, I wanted to thank you guys for coming on, taking your Saturday morning away to work around my baby schedule. So I appreciate it. Is there anything else you guys wanted to plug or give shout outs to before we get out of here?
Sure. We do have a Patreon. So if you want to look up the Legion Academy on Patreon, you can support us. We have different tiers. A lot of that goes a long way to helping make all of our content better. And there are little stuff we mail out like from time to time. You get card sleeves, you get acrylic tokens, different little trinkets and tchotchkes and stuff that you can use on the table. You could also check out our blog, legionacademy.net. We have blog articles on there. We also have links to the dice simulator built by Michael Hammond. So you can access that at legiondice.com or legionacademy.net. And on the top, we have a link to it. You could also support Sean's Terrain Studio Patreon if you want to get really awesome tutorials and tips about scratch building terrain and different substrates you can use, different painting techniques. Sean, I'm sure you could speak to that more, but there's a lot of different avenues that you guys can support us. Also, if you just give us a like and a share or a thumbs up on our content, like that goes a long way too, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, perfect. I won't plug the Patreon anymore. Joe did a great job there. I will talk a little bit about the Terrain Studio. That is, of course, my business. That's what funds a lot of what I do here in studio for Friday Night Fights or Legion Academy. It's really truthfully a reciprocal investment. But I do appreciate you guys doing that. I try to do a monthly tutorial or sneak peeks on a lot of things. I think you guys have seen some of my work with FFG for sure and some of the products. So yeah, if you guys are interested in checking that out, you have access to everything always. So it's not a paid subscription. It's basically a monthly fee, and you get access to everything that ever was and ever will be. So I do appreciate that. And then I just also want to plug, Joe talked about the likes and the thumbs up, but there's another way that you guys can support us, and that's being like part of our live audience every week. So Wednesday for Legion Academy, you guys can join us. We go 7:30 CST. For Friday Night Fights, we go at 8:30 CST, and that's on Friday nights typically. And you guys can just jump into our live audience. The chat is amazing. They answer a lot of questions within the chat. You guys can interact with us, but it's just a cool place to come and hang out. And if you're not playing your own Legion game, at least you can interact. You can cheer on the players or banter with them, and it's just a fun experience. It's a nice way to hang out, especially if you are isolated still or just don't have the means to get to a gaming store or with other players. So it's the closest thing we got without watching a video game. So
yeah, well, awesome. Well, I just want to pile on with what you said. What I enjoy most about these guys is how they interact with us during the streams, and by us I mean the viewers. I've learned a lot. You guys taught me about what happens if all my operatives deploy or all my commanders become operatives and all sorts of stuff like that. So I really highly encourage you guys to at least give these guys a check out, give them a thumbs up while you're there. And I don't know, you guys are doing a good thing, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you being here with me today. So I think that'll do it. Was there anything else you guys wanted to plug, Joe?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for viewing us. Again, I'll have all the links to all these guys' various projects in the thing below. Want to thank everyone for tuning in, and go Commando.
Thank you.